Civil Liberties and Freedom of Religion and the Establishment Clause. This presentation was created by Monica Mann, and me, Jared Acosta, will be speaking due to technical difficulties. What are civil liberties? Civil liberties are the constitutional protections against the actions of government. Many are found in the Bill of Rights, and others, like habeas corpus, are found in the Constitution itself. What are civil liberties? Civil liberties are your protections, but they are not clearly defined. The Establishment Clause is written into the First Amendment. The First Amendment says that the Congress shall not make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. What does this mean? Well, two things. That Congress cannot establish an official religion for the United States, meaning there will be no federal establishment of religion, and the Congress could not interfere with state-established religion. Now here is a list. At the time the Constitution was ratified, several states did have official religions. Virginia, being one of the oldest states, had established religion back in the 1600s, and this lasted well until 1877, with New Hampshire being one of the last to not have this. And the 14th Amendment made that state-established religions were prohibited under the Constitution. The 14th Amendment, original purpose, protect the rights of former slaves and free blacks, made state governments protect citizens' constitutional rights, and limited the power of state governments after the Civil War. This is the 14th Amendment in its full glory. The state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within jurisdiction the equal protections of the law. Here is the growth of the denominations from 1780 all the way to 1860. This is, of course, after the ratification of the Constitution. This, of course, is during the Second Great Awakening. The number of local churches rose sharply. Total memberships in denominations has also grown. These were the 6 of the largest religions at the time, with Lutheran being the highest growing denomination. Now, how does the Supreme Court interpret the laws regarding religion? In the case of Lemon versus Kurtzman, established a 3-pronged test, or the Lemon test, was used to assess whether a law violated the Establishment Clause. The 3-pronged Lemon test asks, does the law have a secular purpose? If not, it violates the Establishment Clause. And is the primary effect either to advance religion or to prohibit religion? If so, it violates the Establishment Clause. Does the law foster an excessive government entanglement with religion? If so, that too violates the Establishment Clause. Here's another way to look at it. We have our 3 little lemons, and it's kind of the easier way to remember it. 1, have a secular religious purpose, does not pass. Not have a primary effect on an advanced religion, it can pass. Does not result in the exclusive government entanglement in religion. Does not involve government and religion, then the laws can pass. An endorsement test. Courts use an endorsement test to determine whether the government impermissibly endorses or disapproves of religion in violation of the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. This test is often used in cases involving public displays of religious symbols. The coercion test. The coercion test is one of the number of tests that the Supreme Court has established for asserting their government practicing violate the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. It is most often used in public school cases. Neutrality. The court has used neutrality to determine whether the government was violating the Establishment Clause. In several more recent discussions, beginning with the Mullah versus Allen in 1983 court case, the High Court used neutrality in part to determine whether a certain government laws or actions were violating the Establishment Clause. Now, what Supreme Court has decided? Do the Lemon test. You can have displays of certain things or religious symbols as long as you have things of fiction like Santa or reindeer nearby. That is the only way to have such displays in a public area. When it comes to prayer, schools are not allowed to force any form of prayer. There must only be done individually or by a teacher who wishes to do their prayer individually. They are not to be forced, and they are never to ever be used in any way to write laws within the school itself. Now, the Ten Commandments display is only allowed in the state capitol, which is in the private area of the governor. Or not of the governor, but of any other people that work within the building. They can have their form of religion in their offices as they so wish. However, they cannot be used in courthouses or in the classrooms, as those are all fully government funded and fully government held places. Thank you.
Everyone knows that in the United States, church and state are separate. The government can't Everyone knows that in the United States, church and state are separate. The government can't establish a religion. But what does that really mean? Before America's independence, the government did plenty of things to establish religion, like force people to go to church, pay the salary of ministers, and limit the right to vote to church members. But after independence, all of that came to an end. The First Amendment's Establishment Clause said that the government couldn't establish religion anymore. It couldn't force people to go to church, and it couldn't stop people from going to church either. Americans were free to worship God or not. That's how the Establishment Clause was understood for almost 200 years. But in 1971, an odd Supreme Court case abandoned this history and made up a new test for interpreting the Establishment Clause. It's called the Lemon Test. The problem is the Lemon Test is a vague standard that ignores history and invites some really crazy lawsuits. Like lawsuits forcing governments to knock down memorials to fallen soldiers and police officers, and banning school choirs from singing traditional Christmas carols, and requiring a nativity or menorah to be balanced by something non-religious, like elves or reindeer. These lawsuits are not just silly, they erode our culture. The nation's founders had no problem with religious symbols in the public square. Why? Because the government isn't telling anyone who to worship or how to worship. It is simply recognizing that religion is a normal part of human culture, and it's letting people express themselves in the public square. That is something that benefits us all. Justice Scalia famously said that the Lemon Test is like a zombie in a late-night horror movie that haunts our public square and makes us afraid of religious symbols. It's time to bury that monster for good, and let judges get back to what really works. An establishment clause that doesn't try to scrub every trace of religion from the public square, but instead guarantees everyone's freedom to worship, or not, as they see fit.
Freedom of religion protects citizens' rights to practice their religion. The Free Exercise Clause prohibits government interference with religious beliefs and within limits religious practice. As stated by the Supreme Court in Branford v. To accept any creed or the practice of any forms of worship cannot be compelled by laws. Over time, the Supreme Court developed a test to help judges determine the limits of free exercise. First fully articulated in the 1963 case of Sherbert v. Verner, this test is sometimes referred to as the Sherbert or compelling interest test. The test has 4 parts, 2 that apply to any person who claims that his freedom of religion has been violated, and 2 that apply to the government agency accused of violating those rights. The Supreme Court, however, curtailed the application of the Sherbert test in the 1990 case of Employment Division v. Smith. In that case, the court held that a burden on free exercise no longer having to be justified by a compelling state interest, if the burden was an unintended result of laws that are generally applicable. There are provisions to the Free Exercise Clause in which revolve around the liberty of persons to reach, hold, practice, and change beliefs freely. According to the dictates of conscience, the Religion Exercise Clause prohibits government interference with religious beliefs and within limits religious practice. In a democratic society, in the interest of public safety, for the protection of public order, health, or morals, or for the protection of the rights and freedoms of others. For example, as some religions may be okay with human sacrifice, however, it is prohibited due to the immorality of nature. As we have seen occur over the result of the pandemic regarding the vaccine, there has been a huge controversy regarding whether forcing the vaccine upon citizens was immoral. Due to the religious beliefs, individuals refused to take the vaccine, in which they were negatively impacted in terms of job termination, unable to attend in-person schooling, unable to attend some restaurants, and so forth. Stated in an article by Richard Fulton on January 13, 2022, the U.S. Supreme Court blocked a Biden administration directive that larger businesses either require employees to be vaccinated or have masking and testing policy, even as the court allowed another federal vaccine mandate to go into effect for some 10 million healthcare workers. Nothing in these rulings stops the underlying lawsuits from proceeding. Nor does either ruling speak to whether government must allow for religious exemptions from otherwise legitimate vaccination requirements. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits employers from discriminating against employees based on religion, meaning they must reasonably accommodate sincerely held religious beliefs, said Dominique Camacho. However, because of the freedom of religion, there then became an exemption in which allowed for citizens who did not receive the vaccine for compelling religious beliefs to not be penalized due to this action. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievance. As stated in the Wikipedia, federal or state legislations cannot therefore make it a crime to hold any religious belief or opinion due to the Free Exercise Clause. Legislations by the United States or any constituent state of the United States which forces anyone to embrace any religious belief or to say or believe anything in conflict with his religious tenets. It is also barred by the Free Exercise Clause.
The right to practice or to not practice religion was one of the most important civil liberties added to the Bill of Rights. Many of the founders were well aware of how the church was influential in the operation of Great Britain's government. Even France and Greece, the foundational nations of representative and direct democracy, were under the influence of the secular churches. With this new nation having been built and created through many different ethnic groups who carry their own religious identity, it was crucial that the government sustain from establishing a national religion to risk turmoil or even the destruction of the nation itself. As we can see, the founders' ideas of separation of religion and separation from religion of government is almost seen in every Supreme Court case so far. In the landmark decision of Lemon versus Kurtzman in 1971, the Supreme Court held that no religion could or should be implemented in discussions of laws and or state government-sponsored places. This would be known as the Lemon Test and is used still today after nearly 40 years.